And we're live. Thanks for listening to the first installment of our podcast. It's themed with Overwatch, gameplay, and all the lore and everything else that you need to know. Your host is Molly and sidekick Natty K. We'll be talking about a few different things on this episode. We've got some casual gameplay in the background, maybe not related to what we're talking about. So, what's the first thing on the agenda today, Molly?
And first off, sidekick Natty K, man, I don't consider myself the host.
Well, I'm also not a DPS man. I'm more or less tanker support main.
I guess the first thing that we're gonna start off with a hot take. You were recently on the Overwatch forums, and there's usually quite a bit of hot takes on that, right? It can be quite the mess.
It's
But you sent me a post that was bronze is harder than gold. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, if you're going to be a Smurf, why not Smurf in bronze? I know that there are a lot of people that talked about being GMs that Smurfed in plat and gold, but there's more plat and diamond and masters players to make up a Smurf population that would probably rather go to bronze. And also, I'm not sure how the new system is going to start people off that are playing comp for the first time. It felt like in Overwatch 1, you basically started off in silver and you went up or down. With Overwatch 2, I'm hoping that they're doing more of whatever your MMR is going to be, and then just do the fine tuning right there. It already more or less knows where you're at, and to just do fine tuning with the competitive. So the experience that I've had, I didn't really play any bronze for Overwatch 2. The system just shoved me up into silver really quick. And if you're listening and you're not aware, there was a problem with the matchmaking for competitive in Overwatch 2 where really high profile people that were grandmasters were getting placed really low, like low diamond and high plat. And a lot of people that were formerly gold were getting put in bronze. People that were in plat were in silver, and so on and so on. So if you were in bronze and you deserved to be in bronze, that was a really good chance you were going against a high gold player in there. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
those people got frustrated and just stopped playing comp altogether. I think that if you stuck with it really hard, eventually it leveled out a little bit. But I still think that we're feeling the effects of that. A lot of people will do their placements for a competitive season and sort of just cool it. I was like that the first 4 or 5 seasons that I played. I would do so many matches and then not really make that the core of what my gameplay was. So I was consistently playing comp in bronze, but no longer a bronze player, and felt that it was hard to get out of bronze on Overwatch 1. So that's the reason a lot of people would make a new account. That's the reason that I made a new account. But back to the core question: is bronze harder than gold? A lot of people seem to think it is, and you're going to have a wider range of poor players. You know, there's players that aren't good. There's players that are bad. There's players that are awful. And I think if you're in bronze, you're going to have a lot more dealing on your team of those really awful players that won't let you make any space, won't let you secure any kills, don't give you the support you need when you push in. They just don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, there was a one of the famous streamers, Siegel. He actually mentioned that there was a sim plat player in his top 500 game, and what had happened was he or she won 10 games in a row on quick play, and it messed up their MMR because I guess they were just winning those games, so it put them throughout the ranks. And then when they tried to play comp, it actually put them in like GM and Masters and stuff. So that hopefully by season 4 we start to see like the change of um, of the MMR system starting to take place. I think now bronze has cleared out a little bit, I would think. Uh, Besides season 1, for people that don't know, I peaked at Masters, and when I did my placement, it put me silver 5, which is almost
An
bronze.
absolute joke of a system. I don't know how they got it that wrong.
And like I'm not too worried about it for that fact, because I know that I know my ability of the game, and I know that I'll be able to climb out of it. I actually didn't play any of season 1 and season 2 after that. Just life happened, but I'm back in season 3, and a couple of days ago I decided that, hey, I'm going to start climbing this. And just 2 days ago, I climbed out silver, I climbed out gold, and I got plat. So hopefully I can get out of plat and diamond, and that's going to be fun. I'm just trying to get used to this new 5v5 with Tracer with less damage, and she you have to be a lot more patient with that. But back to the topic of, is bronze harder than gold? I don't think so. It can't be. You're going to be going up against new players. That's what bronze is. They just don't understand the game, whether it's mechanical or whether it's game knowledge. You're all trying to figure out what this game is. So instead of, I don't know, I feel like the game plan there is just play for yourself and try to carry.
Well,
Go Mora and just go in the back line and just start killing people and then heal yourself. I don't think I don't think you can team up at that level
I
because
think,
you don't really see like that type of gameplay, right? So
well,
I'm not entirely sure.
if you really are a silver player climbing out of bronze, or you really are a gold player climbing out of bronze, I can see bronze being very hard because you don't have your follow up
Of
from your
course,
team.
yeah.
But someone like you and me can, not bragging here, we're not amazing, but we can compensate for that. The difference between like a casual player and a dedicated player is in the game while everything's going on, instantly picking out who is the enemy priority kill, who on your team is needing pilling, who on your team is lacking in their skill a little bit, and trying to make up for the role that maybe that they would be doing. So
Yeah.
if you're only silver and you're just trying to get that little jump out of bronze, I could see that being a huge struggle.
Yeah, so yeah, it's really hard to determine that, right? Especially since the season one mishaps, but I definitely think it's getting a lot better. But also leads to like when I was grinding up to masters on Overwatch 1, the games feel completely different now. It like because in Overwatch 1, at the very end of it, plat players were not plat players. So plat games were really crazy most of the time, and then like same as diamond, and then of course to masters. But like silver games feel like silver games for the most part. Gold games feel like gold games for the most part. For solo queue, now when you get a group and stuff, that changes because everyone's working together and you're in your own group. But for solo queue, it's starting to feel like that. And I, man, I'm not gonna lie. I Some games I actually feel kind of bad because I want to climb my account, but I'm over here noob stomping when I don't want to. Right?
Right. It's not
Uh,
it's not fair to them, but at the same time, that's where the system placed you at and for you to climb out of. And there are some developers notes that had stated it's intended that in Overwatch 2 you're placed lower than where you were in Overwatch 1 for the purpose of the fun adventure of climbing through the ranks.
yeah.
Sort of a goal from get to point A to point B. If everybody just instantly popped back into where they were, I would have been 100% okay with that, but maybe from a game developmental standpoint, they thought, what's the challenge in that?
Yeah. I think something definitely needs to change though, because it so for example, last night in comp, I went 9-1. I'm just trying to get to the rank that I'm actually at, and it it was gold, or it might have just been my first plat game. They had a master support player on their team playing Brig, which is fine because I'm a master DPS. Like it's okay. Like, but I feel bad for when it's actually gold players going up against that. Or is the reason why that person got placed on the enemy team, was it because of me? Like, I don't know. I went on a 9-win streak, so it's like, was the game just trying to figure out where I'm getting placed? But I mean, it was on King's Row. Yeah, like you can't beat that. Like they played Brig, so it was a nice 1v1 most of the time. Like I literally saved up Pulse Bomb just for them, just because like they were great. They were great at the game. So like they kept that team together. So like I had to full focus them. But like it's weird. Like would that Masters player would have got put in that group if I was there, or if I wasn't there. Like I don't know, like, which is strange for gold, right? You would think gold players are in gold.
You would I just get the feeling like a Masters player, whether they're on tank or support or DPS, all of those classes shoot bullets at people and can be in a moment DPS. Not to say that that's always a transition or a parallel from one style to another,
Yeah,
but
and
that
they
just seems
have
unfair.
Master's game play as well, like Master's game knowledge as
Yeah,
well. If they're gold or plat in tank or DPS and they're a GM and support, they know everything. So like they're definitely going to climb just with their game knowledge. Now, if their mechanics are awful, like they'll learn that in the like just climbing it. But like that game knowledge of when to get in, when to go out, when to start the fight, when to use your abilities, like that goes a long way.
it really does. It helps. I'm not going to call it a crutch, but it's certainly, instead of saying that maybe they're gold in DPS when they're a GM support, they're not really gold DPS. They're like gold plus plus. There's that added extra edge that the game doesn't have any sort of parameters to measure as far as game sense. That doesn't get measured by the system, I don't believe.
Yeah.
And I've got my own suggestions for how that they could do that I've shared on the forums.
Mm.
But that's a topic for another day.
Yeah. So let's get into something a little bit different than bronze is harder than gold. What's your thoughts on season three? Because we kind of, well, just speak for myself. I stopped season one, and at the end of season one, and then at season two, I just didn't play at all. Just because there's certain heroes that I play, and they just didn't feel good. And I'm glad Tracer is feeling somewhat decent right now. I really wish that she would have her 6 damage instead of 5. It might be 5.5, but I really miss that being able to one clip just because the supports are just insane, which leads into season three, and then also thoughts of the new heroes because these new heroes are no, they're absolutely insane, right?
Well, I remember when Ramatra came out. I ended up doing the battle pass thing to get him, and there was something about Ramatra that felt almost intuitive. Like he was so well designed that I had never played on him before, but it's just I instantly got a feel of his flow. And right now, I think he is a pick for not his shield, but his brawl ability. I think he works good on the push maps, and then his ult is game. It's game changing. It's like maybe
Mm-hmm.
you lose a teammate and you have to do something to turn the tide. You can hit Q on him, and even though that's been nerfed, that's still 20 full seconds of an ultimate going on from him with a speed boost. And that's insane. I've seen Ramatras just be, average, mediocre, fine, but then they hit that Q and it's match is over.
It's crazy because he was actually considered like balanced or a little underpowered when he first came out because you had Hog, you had Gigadoom, you had Orisa being really, really great and being able to just create all that space. So he didn't get much value. And then with the current nerfs and rebalances, Ramatra is seeing a lot of play right now. And where I'm climbing that account, he's seeing a lot of play right now, and he can do a lot of damage, and he can create a lot of space, especially if our team's playing like Reinhardt. Ramatra just wins that all day.
He really aids in the distance that most tanks don't have great distance. Look at Winston, look at Reinhardt, but Ramatra doesn't have a cone of fire, so it's not exactly pinpoint, but he does have the distance like Orisa has. And also, if Sojourn is dominating, or who doesn't want a shield? I'm not saying the shield's amazing, but that shield's going to help when it's what's played correctly. And I think that you play his shield much like you play a Sigma shield. It's not there to just take up all the soak up all the poke and spam damage. It's there to work against specific things at specific times.
Yeah, talking about Sojourn, did you see where the devs are looking into what they can do to tweak her kit just because they're not entirely sure what to do, and this just goes to are the devs looking at more of the casual play or the higher up play? Because Overwatch 1, they would look at the top 500 and then they would tweak the heroes from that, and then it would trickle down throughout the ranks. And now it's seeming like they're doing the more casual play because they said she's kind of decent right now. On top of it, her win rate's not great at the lower ranks. So, which, the lower ranks are not hitting those one shots and they're probably not getting mercy boosted as well. So, on top, besides the mechanical skills of masters and above, right? So, that's a really weird take that I'm not entirely sure where I I'm not sure where I'm at on that of
Well,
like who do you update the game for, right? Because there's definitely a lot more casuals than higher ranked players, of course, and you want the game to be for the majority of the community, right? Not just the 1 to 3%,
well,
right?
the
But
game
at the same
yeah,
time,
they're never
yeah.
gonna do anything that would lose them. It's always in the choice of money when you're a company like Activision. If you're a small independent gamer, you might sacrifice a little bit of profit for the
Hmm.
fun of the game. Activision won't do that. It's in the best interest of making money, and that's going to be the core player base. If your pro league people aren't happy with Soldier, they'll simply switch to somebody else who's the better
Hmm.
pick. But if the majority of your player base is unhappy and just turning the game off because of their frustration with Soldier, you're losing money that way. So it's going to be balanced around the majority of the player base, which I'm assuming is probably silver and low gold, maybe.
I would say it's actually silver because they did like statistics or something. I'll have to find the document, but most people are lower than what Overwatch 1 was. Just because with Overwatch 2, there's such a influx of new players, and a lot of them are bronze. So that definitely lowers. I think the average is definitely silver to gold. I wouldn't think that the average is gold to plat anymore.
Probably not. That sounds correct. Something else to
Hmm.
consider is that where this is a competitive shooter game, and you have casual 11-year-old kids at home on the weekend play, and then you have professional gamers with big money Twitch accounts that they can dedicate time to this and be on a professional level. There's no possible way to balance the game for both. Some
Yeah,
people
of
have
course. You
aim and
just
some
yeah.
people don't, and that's why we have these variety of characters. And I think the solution is going to be in map development, and they do this a little bit to an extent. If you have a map that really caters to a certain hero a certain way, and it gets a pick rate up on that hero, they feel a little bit more valuable. So right now, look at Sombra. Nobody's picking Sombra, but if they had a map, and we'll just use this as an example, Sombra, historically, Torbjorn and Sim have been not great picks. But if you get the right map, you can really make them work. And that's a way to get people picked on the roster that usually aren't. And it shows the
Hmm.
variety that your game can have. Nobody wants a match where they're going against the same 5 heroes every single time. That's boring. And from a development standpoint, they should do it that way. And from the standpoint of you can't balance it for the casual players and for the pros both, that's why there are people like Winston and Moira and Brig. Not saying that they're easy, but they have a lower skill floor where you can start to make some value there. And if a lot of people want to even play on a controller, even though they're on PC, they still feel more comfortable playing on the controller. So what do? They play somebody like Mercy. And that's not to say
Hmm.
that Mercy's like, oh, it's easy, anybody can do it. There's definitely a large area to fine tune for her to be amazing with her, but it at least gets
Hmm.
them started. If somebody who is maybe this is their first time playing a first person shooter, if they start off on Widow, guess what? They're not having a good day. They're not making any
Hmm.
value, and it's going to take forever. It's going to take 200 hours of gameplay to get good on an FPS if it's your first FPS.
Especially something with Overwatch, right? Because Overwatch, I kind of look at the new player experience, and that's got to be extremely daunting, right? Because we've been playing Overwatch not since the very beginning, but we've been playing it since like season 9 to 12, around there, so kind of early. But at the same time, like we had a full game to develop, gameplay and skill and all that. Like these players are trying to figure it out after a full game of since like 2017, right? And then on top of new heroes, which leads into the next hero, Kiriko. What are your thoughts on that support hero?
Having played Kiriko with you in a comp match on King's Row makes me think you'd be crazy to not pick her to defend King's Row. But that's just one example. It's like the cleanse is overpowered. I think that cleanse shouldn't be any different than Anna's nade. Anna's nade right now feels a bit weak. It's like it doesn't last as long as it used to. It used to in Overwatch 1, if you threw an anti-nade on somebody, that time's up. The team is finishing you up. And now if you anti-nade somebody, it's as if, well, it lasted 1 second, I guess. Oh well. That's just how it feels for me, though. That cleanse, that's the get out of jail free card. It's immortality. It's everything. And on top of that, her mobility. I'm okay with support having really good mobility, but hers needs to be where it can't go through walls. She needs it to have line of sight, just like a Zenyatta's orb would have to have line of sight.
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna go on a little rant right now. I think Kiriko is the most overpowered hero in the game at the moment. She has insane damage.
Yes,
She
headshots.
has basically immortality field. She can cleanse basically anything, and her mobility is absolutely insane. When I have trouble killing Kiriko as Tracer and not being able to catch her, there's something wrong, right? And at this point, like, I kind of try to stay away from her. Like, she's insane. Like, she one taps me. Like, if she hits me in the head, which I understand she has to hit me in the head, but if you fight her, what is it? Like, just two body shots. She just has to hit me twice, and then I'm dead. And I'm supposed to be going after the supports and stuff, which I understand. It's like, oh, boohoo, you're a Tracer player. You already do enough stuff and all that. But, like, her kit's just insane. She does not feel like a support hero. Like, it's just absolutely nuts. And then on top of it, I think it's crazy, too, because you'll also have that Mercy close to her, right? Because that's the combo right now is Kiriko and the Mercy. So when you finally get that Kiriko down, the Mercy has that new buff where if they're below half health, it goes insane, right? So
It goes
they're
from 60 to 90, or is it 40 to 60?
I'm not entirely sure on the math on that, but I mean it's nuts. It blows my mind away. So it's it's weird right now as a DPS, especially trying to kill the backline because you have that combo and it's more of a patience game for me, of course, where I have to like just tickle, wait it out, and then hope my ball jumps on them, and then I try to go in and get the kill without getting one shot. So, but
There
yeah,
ne-
that's my rant on that. She needs refined.
she
Yeah, she
needs
definitely does,
needs reined
and
in.
that scares me for the new heroes, right? Because if you continue giving all these new heroes, even with Bab, they gave him immortality field. That's Zen's ult. Just hide the disc behind a wall, and then you're good. You're fine. So it's I'm scared about these new heroes because it's going to wash out the existing Overwatch 1 heroes. And I understand that you do not want a new hero to be very undeveloped at the very beginning of the launch because that brings hype, that brings all kinds of viral stuff where because if it's overpowered, it's going to go over the internet, right? And that's how you get people to come back to your game. So it's just a weird thing. It's like, do you Echo for example was insane as well when she first started. Ash was really good as well. It's like they always have these new heroes that are just insane, and then it just takes too long for them to. It's like they don't want to
It's
nerf them because they're new.
Well, it's better for them to start them off really powerful and then dial them back. And if you imagine from the perspective of Blizzard, of Activision, if they make Sojourn really crazy, there's going to be streamers that do crazy stuff with her and then make all these videos. People will watch it, go, "Oh, that's cool, that's amazing," and then they get new people into the game because of that. Now, that's not obviously
Yeah.
their only source of getting new players, but it's a contributor, and so I think that they
Hmm.
like it that way. I think Doomfist was one that they did that maybe the opposite. Was Doomfist not garbage when he started off, and then he needed a really good patch to become really good?
For Overwatch 2, Doomfist, Tank
Overwatch
Doom.
Overwatch One, when Doomfist first came out, I felt like he wasn't very prominent.
I don't remember when Doomfist came out. What season was that?
I think he was the one who came out after Moira, so that would have been around season 8 or 9.
Okay, so I wasn't playing then. The very first hero that came out for me was Hammond Ball.
Okay.
So I think that was around season 12, 13. So that was the first hero I really got to see. And then I got to see Ash and Bap. And I'm trying to think of what else. Sigma. Which, talking about Sigma, Sigma is in a pretty good spot right now. I feel like he's kind of balanced. And usually Sigma's been the reason why tanks have been so crazy, especially well for Overwatch 1, right? Because that's when Double Shield got insane, and then he also has his Matrix like Diva, and then he has Rock. Like he really changed it. So talking about Overwatch 1, do you miss Overwatch 1 any?
I miss it a lot, and there's just a certain feeling, and I don't know if it was because of the balance or what it was, that it felt more tight and refined, with the exception of the end days of it, the death rails of it dying and going out and being unpopular. That did kind of feel bad. The matchmaker got really wonky the last season, but at its peak, when we played with the Zarya Roadhog meta, I loved that. Everything about it felt good, and I'm not a fan of these new maps modes push. Not a big fan of that, and I think that just Overwatch One, I got just refined with it, and I liked it more. And when Overwatch 2 came out, I thought, this is strange. It feels like I'm having a dream of me playing Overwatch. Now, some of
Mm-hmm.
that was fixed by going into the settings and adjusting some mouse parameters, but
It's like
there's
a very fluid movement, right? And
yeah.
it's like shots felt really like lucid, which was weird. I'm right there with you. I'm not a fan of push. I like the maps though. I'm starting to really, excuse me. I'm starting to really like the new Queens map and Circuit Royale. As Tracer, I'm able to get like on the side behind them, and so I'm really taking. I'm really hoping for those maps. Besides, sadly, besides of Kings Row, because I'm just trying to climb that account, right? So, and Kings Row third point is so hard to play Tracer. It is so hard. So I just have to switch and go like Soldier or Bastion or something, just depending on the comp. But I'm starting to really dial in on those maps. I'm not a big fan of the map pool. I can't wait to see even like all the maps be used and stuff like that. And because right now it's very sniper heavy, and so it's kind of weird. You have to play behind cover, but you can't do damage because if you move out, you get sniped. Like it's really weird. But I like the maps. I do I hate it because I wish we had this amount of hype, amount of support from the devs for Overwatch 1 because they just let that game completely die. And I wish we had the Battle Pass. I wish we had everything that we have in Overwatch 2, but in Overwatch 1.
Do you prefer the battle pass as opposed to the loot boxes?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Which
Really?
yeah, well, I don't know. I didn't care for the loot boxes, and I've always been a fan of the battle passes. Even when I played other games like Apex and Fortnite, I was always a fan of those, and I think it's just a really cool way to just level up instead of just getting credits and then just using it for loot boxes or getting loot boxes or whatever. I think the battle pass is a lot better, and that's just the normal. That's is just going to be normalized, if not already, right? Free to play Battle Pass is just the way to go for here on out,
The
right?
the battle
If your game
pass
doesn't
is
do that,
it's good long it's better long term. The problem with
mm,
loot boxes is that if you're starting off, ooh, you got a chance to get a legendary skin. You may or may not get it. After a while, I started to 100% not care about loot boxes. I had so many things from them that I didn't pay attention to them. I just looked at the currency that I built up, and it gives you currency for duplicates. And so I was like, okay, I have enough money to buy this particular one that I want.
yep.
So short term it was better, but long term I think the battle pass is better. And it's like you said, it's giving you something to look forward to, something to grind
Hmm.
towards. And on a free game, you have to incentivize continued play.
Hmm.
If there's a game is like you bought it and there's nothing else to buy, it's like they why do they care if you keep playing or not?
How do you feel about 5v5?
It really makes it harder to carry a bad player. And but a good player can also be more impactful. So that's a balance in that sense.
Mm.
And 6v6, depending on the patch, I liked it better. I liked the idea of having two tanks. One is a primary and one is a mobility tank or an off tank. On this, they've had to modify. You know, look how they changed Orisa. No longer does she bunker down in place. Now she is a bully to people, and that's good that they changed her that way. But for example, with Balls, he's not a main tank in any way. And if you're playing with a group of people that don't know how to play with you when you play ball, while ball can get a lot of stuff done, your team gets less stuff done.
Mm.
I would like to see some changes to make all tanks sort of not feel the same or be the same, but serve the role as primary and only tank.
Yeah, the thing that I miss about 6v6 is the Rein Zarya meta. I think that's just a classic meta, and that you just can't. When you think of Overwatch, you think of that, right? So I do like 5v5 though. I really do. I think for a player perspective, the games feel smoother, and it's because we just went through a very large portion of double shield meta, and then when it wasn't double shield meta, it was something of some sorts of bunker, and that was just miserable. And now we don't have to deal with that, so it's nice to have. You're not just sitting there and it's like, oh, waiting for the first pick. Like you have um, different comps again. You have Dive, you have Ryan and Lucio and Reaper and May, you have Rush and all of that, which is nice. It doesn't get played a lot right now, but uh, we're seeing different things besides that. A double shield Sigma Orisa. You're not seeing that anymore, which is great in my opinion. Talking about just Overwatch in general, with the Overwatch 2 coming out and all these new seasons, and there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of new players. If you could give a couple tips to new players right now, what tips would you give to them? So, for example, for if they're wanting to climb the ladder, right? They're playing comp, they're brand new. What tips would you give just to help them out to be able to climb, or anything in general, just to help a new player out?
So the biggest factor is going to be grouping up. A lot of times you'll see with new players, if they're a tank, they don't have eyes in the back of their head. They're pushing in while they have their support in the spawn room, and you're having no success from that. Take time to look around, look behind you, group up. Another one is to join the communication, join voice chat. Maybe they're in there and they're going to talk to you. Maybe they're not. It's worth joining to see if they are, because then you can do coordinated attacks. If Sombra's jumping on the Zen in your backline, that guy can say, "Hey, help, peel for me. I need help," and then they can respond instantly to that. Um, if you're going to,
Do you think? I'm sorry to cut you off here, but do you think it's still important to get into voice comms with the new pinging system that does everything like that? Because there's a lot of people that don't want to get into voice comms because of anxiety, of comp anxiety, of people getting yelled at, and the toxic trait of Overwatch, and they just want to chill. They want to play their game and just try hard and focus without getting in comms. Well, because we both know this. Like, you enjoy getting into voice comms and working as a group. I'm the opposite. I don't like getting into voice comms, and I just try hard, right?
Right.
So, is the ping? I don't know if getting into voice comms would be necessarily a tip, or just learning how to communicate via voice or via ping. I think would be the way to re state that.
Well, I was playing in a match with the guy who was in voice, and I'm like, "Are you actually there?" He's like, I just listen." He typed out, "I was like, I'm just here to listen," and so
Yeah, yeah.
he was at least making the effort for that. And this is going to sound harsh, but if you're going to play competitive, you should be trying as hard as absolutely possible and using every advantage. And voice communication is an advantage. Why would you not utilize that advantage? I understand people will have anxiety. I understand people don't want to be in comms. If you absolutely can't do it, then be right on responsive to that ping system. I've noticed a lack of pinging, um, or people paying attention to stuff when I ping it. Like if something's in the back line that I think maybe I'm the only one that noticed that person just kind of whiz by in the corner of my eye, and I go to ping it. There's not always a
Hmm.
great response to that. Also,
Yeah.
you can hit Z and you can tell people when you have your ultimate. You can do these keybinds. For me, it's F is back up or fall back, and G is group up. Um, Imagine, you and me, we stay in comms, and so imagine if we didn't have comms, how much of a disadvantage that would be for our synergy.
Yeah, that's definitely true
Because I
on that
definitely,
as well.
as a tank, I really depend on you to be the eyes in the back of my head sometimes. And when I play
Hmm.
support, I see all this stuff that's going on that the team's tank just can't see, just because they're in a different position than me.
Hmm.
The other thing, as far as advice for new players, is going to be knowing when to switch. If you're on Pharah and the hit scan, the Ash, the Cassidy is giving you a really hard time, go ahead and switch off to maybe Junkrat instead. It's similar damage. It's you're throwing grenades versus throwing rockets, except you're staying in better position. You can even switch to Echo if you have a map where it's not necessary to stay as high. But understanding that when it's time to switch, am I getting hard countered? Look at the tab button. Have you died 7 times and the rest of your team has only died 3 times? This is
Hmm.
a game of chess, and it's a game of rock paper scissors. As unfortunate as that is for some people, they hate that aspect of it. They hate that there's hard counters, but since it exists, you got to go with it if you want to try your absolute hardest to win. Knowing who counters who, that's a daunting task for a new player. How many characters are there? 40, 38, 35 characters?
There's quite a bit, right? And so it's just to the point. It's like you kind of need to know a little bit about every single hero. It's like, oh, they have a enemy tracer. It's like, oh man, let's go uh, Mercy Brig, cast Torb or something. It's just knowing what to go is quite daunting for sure. You mentioned earlier about dying 7 times compared to three. I think if it's the biggest tip um, that I could give is to not die. And I know like that sounds. I'm trying not to have that get good mentality, but if you're positioned well, you should be able to go in or go out of the battle. Now, there's just sometimes you're going to die. You're going to get. They're going to press Q. Yeah, it's going to happen. There's nothing you could do, and that if you get grabbed and then they dragon you, right? Unless like you have immortality, blah blah blah. But there's a new setting that you actually showed me, and it's been really nice because a lot of new players they don't realize the kill feed. So there's actually a setting that you can turn on for when your teammates die, it will make a noise. And I highly recommend turning that on because it takes a while trying to keep up with your ultimate, keep up with your team, keep up who's died, who's been killed, who's the focus. So if you turn that on, that noise will be able to tell you it's like, hey, okay, we lost one person. Oh man, we just lost two more people. I need to get out. And then you get out, you regroup, you reposition, and then you go again because the chances of you 1v5, 1v4, 1v3 are very slim. It really just depends. Now, if you're rough on time right now and you're stalling, that's a whole different thing. But just knowing to just try not to die and knowing when to get in and out is a huge factor.
I agree 100%. When I would say that learning to pay attention to the kill feed was one of the last things that I did, and when I started paying attention to that, it let me be a better player. And
Mm-hmm.
and anybody listening that's new, stay positive. You're going to get better at this game if you put the time in and you want to learn and you make the effort to be better. It's just there's so much to this game. It's a lot of information to take in and to learn. And probably the best thing is jump in mystery heroes or something where you're getting comfortable and understanding the mechanics of all the different heroes to choose from. That way, when you're as say you really like to play Zarya and you're going in against an Orisa, you'll know what Orisa can and can't do. You'll know what Orisa's weak points are, when to engage, when to disengage. Those arcade games do have their value in that.
They do. Yeah, they really do. Because that gets you out of your comfort zone, especially if you're just trying out one hero and staying with that one hero. That gives you a feel. My buddy actually started playing Overwatch for the first time yesterday, and it's really funny because usually you gravitate just towards one hero that that you get a feel for, and he was actually trying out different ones, and he tried Winston, he tried Soldier, he tried Torb, he tried Junkrat, and he loved Torb. He loved the fact of Torb. He also liked Junkrat. So he wasn't a big fan of Winston, but I think right now with the tanks having quite a bit of um, uh, tanks create so much space and kind of like have the speed of the game. They change it with if you're jumping in or if you're holding a spot. They determine that. So I think that was just too much for him. But with him playing Torb or Junkrat, he was just spamming, right? So like he enjoyed it. So which is awesome to see that new players are really liking this game.
Right. And they're I don't know. I'm curious as what the numbers are like. How many people from Overwatch 1 carried over to Overwatch 2 and how many quit playing before the game ended and just never came back? There's has to be
Mm-hmm.
a large chunk of this game right now that is new players that started in October and that was the first time they played was Overwatch 2. They never played Overwatch 1.
Well, a lot of people left after Overwatch 2 started too because they were like, "Oh, it's just reskinned," or like the drastic changes. Like for example, me, like I felt like because I grinded really hard on Overwatch 1 to prepare for Overwatch 2. And Overwatch 2 happened and I just could not for the life of me get this timing, the changes, the 5v5 changes, everything down. And then on top of it, uh, supports were a lot stronger because they do a lot more DPS now, and also they had a lot more passives to them, and so it just felt like I could not kill anything at all as Tracer, and it was really really I don't know, like I just hated it. I just didn't feel any value for when I played Tracer, and it just felt like everything was destroying me, and I was like, oh man, well my hero is gone. Oh, why? Like I could switch, but like I enjoy. That's where I get the most enjoyment is when that hero's there, right? So I'm just glad that she's in a decent spot right now because I don't know. It's um, we'll just have to see how the next seasons go for sure.
Do you feel like Overwatch 2 is its own game or it's a reskin or it's an expansion?
Um, no, it's definitely a new game. They have too many new features for it to be an expansion or that too many new maps, sorry, and new heroes, redesigned heroes. Arissa, Doom. They have the battle pass. It's Overwatch. Don't get me wrong. It is Overwatch, but it's Overwatch 2. 5v5. It's a whole new system. It's Overwatch 2. To the point where it felt too different that I didn't know if I would like Overwatch 2, and I'm finally used to it now. But it was so different to me that I didn't like it at first, and that's what I was trying to get at. I don't know why people say, "Oh, it's just reskin or expansion." That's a different game. The timing's different. Everything about it's different. Yeah, you still have Cassidy, you still have Tracer, you still have that, but like it's at the end of the day, it's going a whole different direction than Overwatch One did, because there was no direction for Overwatch One. They lost the direction in 2017 and they just let it die. So it's a new game for sure. What's your thoughts on it?
For me, it feels like an expansion, and that's because I've seen the effects of how drastic an expansion can be with games like World of Warcraft. Where if you look at classic World of Warcraft and you compare it to the newest expansion, those are different games. Like they're not the same. The World of Warcraft expansions 1, 2, and 3, there's nothing like what just got released or the two expansions before that. Where this has, for example, right now for those watching, we're watching a match on Numbani. They could have at least done something to change this map. I don't hate that they kept the old maps. I'm happy that there are new maps, but all these flank routes are the same. The stuff on the walls are the same. They could have taken half the map and made a mirror image and made it, instead of the payload has to turn to the right, it turns to the left, and that would at least give it a different, unique feel. And as far as slight changes to some of the established heroes, like there's a rework on Bastion, there's a rework on Orisa, but it's May is still May and Cass is still Cass. But I don't know that I would have called this Overwatch 2. I would have called this Overwatch Skywalker's expansion of the universe or something. Just give an expansion, because historically expansions have worked really well for Blizzard, and that's what's kept World of Warcraft going for 15
DLC.
years. Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's cool that we have two different takes on that, though.
and I would have paid
Um,
money too. I would have paid the 15.99 for the expansion for this game instead
oh,
of it.
of course,
But
because we
now it's a
love Overwatch, right? So,
now they do get. I'd have to look at the numbers, and I'm sure that as a business model, they decided this was the better choice to make money for them, because people are going to buy stuff in the shop, and it's a free game, so you're going to suck in instantly millions of players. Alrighty, well, we want to thank everybody for listening to this podcast, and if you're watching, thank you for watching as well. You need to check out our channels. We each have one. Mine is Curb Stomp, and his is Mully OW. And imagine this: the OW stands for Overwatch. So check us
who would
out.
have thought?
We're making shorts all the time. We're making videos. We're making highlight reels. We're going to continue in the future doing these types of podcasts and discussions on Overwatch. So check back with us every week, and we'll try to have some content for you. Thanks for watching.
Bye bye.